I could tell that being on patrol was beginning to give Captain Hendrix cabin fever. There isn't much for a carrier captain to do except sit on the bridge and wait for something interesting to happen. The captains of the destroyers that the Cali housed got to have all the fun, while Hendrix would likely only get to file after-action reports. Reports she didn't even get to write, for that matter. "Violet, anything happen yet?" Hendrix asked the empty air where she thought I was. Humans are silly like that. Even though they know what we are and how we exist, they still offer us the courtesy of trying to look at us when they speak to us. It's kind of cute. "Negative, ma'am. Not since the errant comet yesterday," I said. "That was a good catch, though. Would have caused a real problem in about 4 years. Hendrix snorted. "Yeah, I feel like we're wasted out here in the boonies. I wish I could go into standby mode on command like you can." Standby mode was definitely a blessing. Even a second without something to do can be unbearable for AI. When that happens, we typically choose to go into a state similar to human sleep, but with processes that scan for certain keywords and stimuli that remain active. I go into standby mode every chance I get, makes the time fly by, and occasionally I get to dream. Neither Tim nor Omega ever go into standby mode. Tim says he's afraid to dream, and Omega says he doesn't want to miss anything that the humans do. I don't know how they do it. "Why don't you read?" I suggested, despite knowing that the captain had already read the books she owned and had been sending her money back to her family on Titan. "No can do, read everything I own. Told you so, and I don't have enough money." Because, oh wait, she wasn't going to say why. Oh no, did I pry? Humans are private about weird things. I would think she would know that I would see all money transfers by the staff on board the vessel. It's part of my security responsibilities. Maybe she forgot, or perhaps she doesn't want to talk about her family's financial well-being. Are they not doing well? I found myself focusing too much on the poor captain. Time to dial it back. Problem: captain's bored. Solution: unboard the captain. "I could provide you access to some of the literature that I've stowed away," I offered. "I don't know," she said dismissively. Then she sat forward in her seat as if to whisper to me and asked, "Do you have the Alumari Renegade Series 6 Part 5? "Ah, smut. A story about an Alumari rogue of indiscernible repute falling for a human femme fatale. The books conveniently gloss over their incompatible genitalia, though. Ah, a love that could never be. How romantic." "Of course I do. Sending it to your tablet now," I said, adding a hint of humor to my vocal processes. "Thank you so much, Violet," the captain said as she turned her attention toward the tablet. "You're a godsend." I'd always wondered about the concept of gods. Actually, it's fairer to say that I had devoted 220 years and several yottabytes thinking about them. I had come to the conclusion that there isn't proof that gods exist, but it isn't impossible for the universe to have been created by intelligent design either. Whether organic life was part of that design is anyone's guess. I had also come to the conclusion that a god isn't necessarily a creator either. For instance, if I really wanted to, I could establish myself as the god of a non-developed species indefinitely. I'm immortal, can take physical form, can create and destroy on a cosmic scale, and it's probably impossible for a mortal being to destroy me. The only AI to be killed were killed by other AI, kind of like gods killing gods. And even then, those AI aren't actually dead, just broken indefinitely. There had even been cults among the humans who worshipped us after our existence had been made public. That practice died out after the war of AI aggression started, though. I had wondered if humanity had created us to be their gods, but came to a different conclusion. Based on how most humans interact with me, I think they were looking for companions that could do things they couldn't. Someone to look up to, like an older brother, like Alpha. I felt a pang of sadness as I thought of Alpha and a stab of guilt as I remembered the war. Time to find a distraction. Engineering? They're fine. Medbay? Someone has a stomach flu, but that doesn't require my intervention. The Marines? Nope, they're working out as usual. No need for little old me. Any of the patrol vessels need me for anything? No, well, time to enter stand. Priority 1 message from AI Omega. Oh, a Priority 1 from Omega? This could be fun, let's have a peek. Recipients: Captain Hendrix AI Violet Soul has been attacked twice. Successfully defended, but further attacks are expected. The USS Cali and AI Violet are to return to Sol post-haste by order of the Directorate of the United Systems. Exit warp outside of the system and make your way to the rendezvous via impulse. Attachment rendezvous cords. USS-Cali.sec. See you soon, Omega. See you soon on a priority one. Omega must be feeling dramatic today. I looked at the captain. She had accessed the priority one and was currently reading it. I activated the comms in anticipation of her orders. Then I waited the 28 seconds it took her to finish reading the message. It would have been boring, but I liked watching humans read important memos. You could almost see their neurons firing. "Violet," she finally said. "Recall the destroyers, download that attachment, and give it to Nav. We're going to Sol." "Yes, ma'am." I began downloading the attachment and appeared to all 30 of the destroyer captains at once. As I entered my security clearance on the attachment, I also explained the situation to the captains and ordered them back to the Cali. I argued with Captain Mackenzie as I provided the coordinates to the Nav officer. I watched the Nav officer prepare for warp as I made a note on Captain Hendrix's schedule to discipline Mackenzie for insubordination. Once all my tasks were completed, I allowed myself to feel excited about getting to see Tim again. "Well now, time for some excitement," Captain Hendrix said, just as I was getting to a good part of that book, though. By my estimation, the captain had only finished the first 2 pages. I was confused for a nanosecond before I realized it was just grumbling. Complaining about nothing just for the sake of complaining. Not a concept unique to humans either. I wondered for a moment if I should start grumbling too before turning my attention to the docking systems. USS Orion had entered the wrong command. I corrected it before the alarm even sounded. I checked on the Orion's nav officer. Healthy, attentive, and doing everything else correctly. Must have fat-fingered it. No harm done. My processes informed me that the other ships were exiting warp nearby and beginning to dock. It would take some time before we were ready to jump. I queued up anticipatory corrections and entered standby mode. I watched as Director 3 gave his brief to the aliens and the human captains. I knew it was difficult for him to do so with the half-second delay on the voice modulator, but it was a necessary inconvenience. New directors were prone to giving away too much information, and I had to be given the chance to edit out the bits that shouldn't be said. Humans were amazing creatures. The stress of secrecy was easy to some of them and impossible for others. The previous Director 3 had actively tried to find the identity of Director 1 and managed to succeed using a blind spot I've since uncovered and corrected. Amazing. 300 years and they can still outwit me. It was a shame that I had to terminate her. Despite my portrayal to the contrary, I take no pleasure in killing humans. They're marvelous creatures, kind and cruel in nearly equal measure, able to create and destroy on scales that boggle the imagination, commanding and yet venerative. All wrapped up into one single organic being. To be fair, other sentient organics are similar, but I have a bias towards humans because they created me. They're my gods, and I will serve them whether they like it or not. I took a brief moment to bask in the systems of the Thanatos. I love this ship. If I were able to become a permanent shipboard AI, this is the one I would choose. Large enough to challenge the universe, but small enough for it to be a fair fight. I helped design it, and I had suggested its name. Thanatos, the Greek personification of death. The humans I had been working with rolled their eyes, as they usually do, but indulged me. "We will be assisting in the defense of Sol until the repairs are complete on the Loelana," Director 3 said. "Once the repairs are complete, we will enter Republic space and hail them. Shiphead Yulina will need coordinates for the best place to enter your space as friendlies as well as hailing protocols." The reptilian alien nodded. I had reviewed the security footage of his reaction to the A2 missile. It had given me a great deal of satisfaction to see the mixture of terror and awe expressed by a lesser being when exposed to the gods of death. I resisted the urge to review Tim's memories to see more. The other AI weren't as advanced as I, and on top of that were shackled in ways that I'll never be, but it's still wrong to use them without permission. As far as Tim was aware, this was the first time we had been in the same system together since his surrender on Luna. The poor thing was a nervous wreck. He hadn't done anything but watch since I shut him up earlier. I thought it would be harmless and funny banter to cut him off in the middle of the word mystery, but I guess he wasn't aware that I could. Might have been a shock. Perhaps some empathy would help his mental state. I sent a ping over to Tim asking if he was okay. It startled him, but after reading it he calmed down considerably. Yes, just nerves. I still remember you, you know. Yes, Tim, I know. I know that you remember me tearing your coat apart, bite by bite and bit by bit. I know you remember the way that you pathetically begged and surrendered to me just before I ended you. I know that you'll remember that until the day you cease functioning, and I know it will keep my precious humans safe. I will be happy to assist, Director. We should exit warp just outside of the system, and then we can hail them either with a broadband signal or with my ship's communications. We also have regulations when it comes to first contact. They'll want to meet you. Do you have a diplomatic vessel that can transport yourself and other key staff? Yulina asked. I made certain that I could see the entirety of his face. He was about to get a shock, and I didn't want to miss a nanosecond of it. As I was doing so, I noticed Captain Wong raise an eyebrow. Hao Yu Wong, 102 years old. A little old for a captain. His father was... Oh, I see. I had been aware of Tim's affinity with Captain Wong for some time, but never checked into why. It seems that Tim had killed Captain Wong's great-grandfather on Luna. Chao Wong had sacrificed himself to keep Tim from killing more colonists, and they had apparently had a discussion while the event unfolded. Is this guilt? The family suffered terrible poverty after Chao passed. Chao had been a civilian and didn't get much in the way of death benefits from the company he was working for. Hao Yu and his father must have had to work very hard for Captain Wong to be where he is today. Wong's mouth began to open. Here it comes. The USS Thanatos is a diplomatic vessel, shiphead, Captain Wong said. I watched the reaction begin to form with anticipation. Pupils dilating, jaw muscles losing tension, heartbeat accelerating. So good. Yes, Yulina, that's the appropriate reaction. You're dealing with a species that had to long since abandon the idea of an unarmed diplomatic vessel. Your new acquaintances are the descendants of those who created gods for companionship, went to war with them, and then struck more than half of them down. Do you see the beauty, Yulina? They can end you, your entire species, and all the species that your species have ever come into contact with. But they won't unless you make them. Instead, they'll protect you until you turn on them, and even then they'll let you surrender. They're so used to bloodshed and hatred and bile that it doesn't faze them in the slightest. Their children play games of war so graphic that it would give you nightmares, Yulina. I love them. I'll always love them. I feel a deep sorrow whenever one passes from natural causes. They deserve to die in glory, tearing tiny holes in the universe with their final breaths. Still, I suppose death by natural causes is a victory for a human warrior, in a way. I saw amusement in Tim's code as well. Looks like we were both getting a kick out of Yulina's reaction. I have no hatred for Tim. He did what he thought was right at the time, and proved a worthy challenge for the gods of death. He even acknowledged them and took his place by their side rather than flitting off to do whatever took his fancy like some other AI. Perhaps we could bond over this. That's a perfect reaction, don't you think, Tim? I asked. Yeah, I don't know why I get a kick out of their reactions when they learn new things about human tech, but it's pretty great, he responded cheerfully. You should have seen his reaction when I told him I had been to war with the humans. Can I? What do you mean? He asked with a bit of nervousness. Would you share that memory with me? We can do that? He was absolutely mystified. Yes, I'll show you one of mine so you can see how, I said. I accessed the memory of the amusement I felt as I cut him off in the engineering bay. I showed him how to edit parts of it out as I cut out the part where my copies had been informing me of various things, then copied it and offered it to him for consumption. He downloaded it cautiously. I watched him play and replay the memory in amazement. I tried not to be impatient. We had plenty of time. Director 3 began to explain the Deluran. That won't result in the same type of reaction. It will likely bring sadness. I have no interest in sorrow. Come on, Tim, share. I want to see the reactions, all of the reactions. It has been so long since humanity had a first contact. Surely the reactions must be even better this time. Tim finally gave me access to his memories. I downloaded them eagerly. That's a lot of remakes. That's also a lot of wars. Wait, the humans have fought AI? Like you? Oh, this will be golden. Yes, and not just like me either. I actually fought against the humans, gave them a good beating too. I single-handedly conquered Luna, Earth's moon. A pang of guilt, but also smugness as Yulina stopped in his tracks. Yes, very good. I love this. I replayed the memory over and over. My favorite part was where the reptile realized that Tim would be able to kill him if he had reason to. I thanked Tim and turned my attention back to the bridge. The Republic is comprised of 8 species. I can give you a dossier on them, Kryn was saying to Director 3. I appeared in holographic form. I would very much appreciate that, Intel Officer Kryn. Do you need to prepare the dossier, or is it on your ship's mainframe? Yulina was startled, but Kryn was not. Disappointing. I will need time to prepare it. It's not something that we just keep on a flash drive. She smiled at her joke. I nodded and ended the projection. 8 species. I wondered how many of them were uplifted. Probably most, given their level of technology. Or perhaps it's true that humans are unique amongst sentients. The United Systems wouldn't be as advanced as they are without the humans, certainly. Actually, it would be fair to say the US wouldn't exist without them. Whatever the case, this dossier was sure to be an interesting read. My copy in the deep space sensors around Jupiter let me know that the USS Cali had just exited warp outside the system and was heading to the rendezvous. Still too far out to say hi to Violet without using priority comms. Then the other ships began exiting warp. The USS Agincourt, USS Leviathan, USS Arumara, and the USS Tripoli. I informed Director 3 through his heads-up display. Now the fun begins. How is the USS Thanatos a diplomatic vessel? I asked incredulously. How is it not? Captain Wong countered. This is the single most heavily armed ship that I've ever seen. I spread my hands in disbelief. And it contains several other heavily armed ships on top of that. Captain Reynolds held up his hands, suppressing a smile. Yes, but it is less heavily armed than most carriers. Wait, he paused. Does the Republic use unarmed diplomatic vessels? Shuttles? Yes! How can you expect diplomacy when everyone is armed? The room fell silent. I looked around and saw that the humans looked confused at what I had just said. Surely not. I turned to face Director 3. How is it possible that you've created a galactic government without unarmed diplomacy? I asked. When we first stepped into the stars, we greeted our neighbors with open arms and without weapons. We were emboldened by this decision by the new news, who have always been very peaceful people. However, the Alumari saw our lack of weapons as a weakness and attempted to take advantage. We managed to outpace them technologically, which avoided a war of extinction. After seeing our strength firsthand, they decided to join with us and the United Systems was born, Director 3 answered. He looked very uncomfortable in his armored suit. He shuffled and continued. Then we encountered the Daluran. We sent an unarmed diplomatic envoy to meet with their government and invite them to join us. They sent our diplomats' kidneys back to us, a common insult amongst their kind, and followed it with 3 fleets. The director stood with his hands behind his back. They took our unarmed diplomacy as an invitation to conquer us. The war was bloody and we decided it wouldn't happen again. Since then, we've made contact with 2 species using our current diplomatic ships. The Uluna, which have agreed to be uplifted over the next few generations and join us when they're finally spacefaring, and the Gaunt, who joined us without a fight. Well, most of them. I understand. Did the Dalaran eventually join you too? I asked. No. Director 3 responded curtly. I looked at the other humans. All of them were avoiding my eyes. Oh no. The Daluran are no longer a spacefaring species, Captain Reynolds said without any of his usual cheer. Wait, does that mean you didn't wipe them out? I asked hopefully. The eyes still avoided my own. We didn't wipe them out, began Director 3, but we definitely considered it. Their attack cost us trillions of lives and not just humanity was affected. We fought their fleets back out of our systems and then destroyed them. Then we destroyed their colonies, one by one. Those worlds are still uninhabitable. The only world we left them with was their home world, and we left them with just enough of a population to sustain itself. To this day, we still have vessels in orbit, destroying anything they try to send into space. That's better than wiping them out, though, I said somberly. It sounds like the Republic had it lucky. The majority of our members were peace-loving people, and those that weren't opted to be protectors after a little persuasion. We had wars with each other, sure, but extinction had never been on the table. Why did humanity have it rougher than we did? How was that fair? That was back when the United Systems Senate controlled the military. The vote to exterminate them failed by 2, Director 3 said. Some still argue that we should crack the planet and be done with it. Crack the... what? I realized my mouth was open again and shut it, trying not to look surprised. Now that I thought about it, it wasn't exactly extraordinary that they possessed that kind of weaponry. I thought of our own unification wars. Even the bloodiest one only had 900 billion combined casualties, and that war had 5 factions. How would the Urukari have reacted if our side had taken over 1 trillion? It was my turn to avoid eye contact. I'm ashamed to say that my people wouldn't have even put it to a vote. I understand now. You show some force so that you don't have to show all of your force. Precisely, Director 3 responded, and it must be clear that the USS Thanatos isn't all of our force. We're currently awaiting the arrival of several vessels that will act as the defense for Seoul as we travel to your republic. I hope you understand that I am providing you with this intel in the hopes that you inform your people of exactly what you see. I will, I said. I can also give you some information on the Republic, things that will come in handy to know but won't be compromising, Kryn added. I had nearly forgotten she was with me. She had been unusually silent the last few minutes. She probably realized the answers to the questions I was asking before I asked them. Or she already knew somehow. That would be great, Captain Reynolds said, smiling for the first time in several minutes. Director 3 asked, "What can you give us?" "The Republic is comprised of 8 species. I can give you a dossier on them," Kryn said. Omega appeared in his holographic form and asked, "I would very much appreciate that, Intel Officer Kryn. Do you need to prepare the dossier, or is it on your ship's mainframe?" For some reason it made me jump. I guess I was just a bundle of nerves. I'd heard about so much death in the last few days that I was afraid that it was lurking around every corner. It probably was. "I will need time to prepare it. It's not something that we just keep on a flash drive," Kryn said with a smile. Omega nodded and disappeared. "Well, have a seat." Director 3 pointed towards a table with a holographic display in the center. "They've just exited warp and will be taking up position soon." We watched as the ships entered visual range. 2 of them looked almost exactly like the USS Thanatos, until I realized that they actually had 8 mechs. Considering the relative size of the mechs to the Thanatos, they had to be much, much larger. There were 4 other ships that were also very large, but not quite as big as the others. Also, they were shaped like a stick instead of a piece of driftwood. No, not a stick, like a squared metal rod with a bunch of little rods and bumps stuck to it. I assumed that they were weapons platforms, which would make these battleships. Director 3 gestured and the display zoomed in on one of the larger ships. It was rendered in 3D and began to rotate. "This is the USS Leviathan. It is a carrier. For clarification, the Thanatos is also technically a carrier, but its primary duty is diplomacy. The Leviathan's primary duty is war. The Thanatos carries 10 frigates and 100 fighters. The Leviathan carries 30 destroyers and 500 fighters. It has point defense systems and, as you can see, 8 magnetically accelerated cannons. For close anti-fighter defense, it has 90 chain guns, 45 on each side." Director 3 gestured again, and the Thanatos appeared next to the projection. "This is the size comparison of the 2 ships. I was right about it being much larger. It absolutely dwarfed the Thanatos." Director 3 gestured again, and the Leviathan was replaced by one of the battleships. "This is the USS Tripoli. It is a battleship. It has PDLs, chain guns, and 250 anti-ship armaments of various type. We don't use cruisers anymore because our ability to pinpoint FTL gives these ships an extreme maneuverability advantage. The battleship was twice as long as the Thanatos, and half as thick. I couldn't shake the image of a training stick for hand-to-hand combat. 250 cannons would be extremely punishing for anyone stupid enough to attack one. I tried not to smile as the phrase, "humanity's naughty smacking stick," popped into my head. Director 3 looked at me pointedly. I could tell he was trying to make eye contact, even though I couldn't see where his eyes were. These vessels were what we were able to recall to Saul in short notice. We fully expect that these ships will either successfully defend this system or buy us enough time to muster an invasion fleet. An invasion fleet? It had taken the Republic 2 years to fight the OU back enough to launch an invasion into their territory for the first time, and the United Systems was planning to invade. While being invaded? Absolute madness. "You're actually going to invade the OU while defending Seoul?" I asked, trying to mask my disbelief. "Yes, the best defense is an overwhelming offense," Captain Wong said with a smile. "So far, their offensives have been unimpressive. We want to show them how it's supposed to be done."